for a further understanding regarding the firmament. So let's take a look at a few of those now. Hast thou with him spread out the sky, which is strong and as a molten looking glass? Job 37:18. Now we can see from that passage in Job that the sky is referred to as strong or hard, like a molten looking glass. We see the theme of the root word raka with the phrase spread out as well. Some translations replace molten looking glass with a burnished bronze mirror, and both phrases refer to something hard and solid. So we can see the support for a solid barrier or firmament present within this passage of Scripture. Now walk with me to the next passage and keep in mind the reference that compares the sky to a looking glass. We're going to begin to form a picture here that we can later cross-reference all of the following scriptures to gain a clear understanding and solid support for a physical barrier known as the firmament. And the likeness of the firmament upon the heads of the living creature was as the color of the terrible crystal stretched forth over their heads above. Ezekiel 1:22. Let's look at another translation of the same passage to gain more insight. Spread out above the heads of the living creatures was what looked something like a vault, sparkling like crystal and awesome. That's Ezekiel 1:22. And we see in that passage of Scripture a description of a sparkling crystal or glass-like barrier spread out above the heads of the living creatures present within this vision. Once again, this is a clear reference to the firmament being a solid physical barrier that is clear like glass or crystal. Let's have a look at one more passage just a little further in the same book to get the next piece of the puzzle. And above the firmament that was over their heads was the likeness of a throne, as the appearing of a sapphire stone. And upon the likeness of the throne was the likeness as the appearance of a man above upon it. Ezekiel 1:26. And here in the same passage of Scripture, just a few verses down, we see that above the firmament there was a throne. Seated upon the throne was a man. And later in the passage, it's made evident that this was the throne of God, and God was seated upon the throne, which was above the firmament, which was spread out overhead the living creatures. So let's look at the last piece of the puzzle now, and afterwards, I'll tie it all together for you. And before the throne, there was a sea of glass like unto crystal, and in the midst of the throne, and round about the throne, were four beasts full of eyes before and behind. Revelation 4:6. According to this passage in Revelation, before the throne of God is something like a sea of glass or crystal. Couple this with a passage in the Old Testament from Exodus, which states that under the feet of God is a paved work like sapphire stone, as clear and as bright as the sky. And we get a very clear picture of the firmament. So if we put it all together, we get this. In Job, the sky is spread out and is as hard as a molten looking glass. Above the heads of the living creatures in Ezekiel is the firmament, which is spread out and appears like sparkling crystal or glass, with the throne of God sitting on the other side of the firmament. Then in Revelation, before the throne of God is what appears to be a sea of glass. So there appears to be a sea of glass before the throne of God, because his throne sits upon the other side of the firmament, which is a solid barrier that is clear like glass. Now you can probably imagine the problems this causes for our current heliocentric model of the universe that's given to us by science today. The firmament single-handedly destroys so many aspects of what we're taught, and we will get into each of those things in subsequent episodes of this series. The firmament is the real deal breaker for our standard belief system. It's either true or it isn't. And if it's true, then Scripture is trustworthy. And what we have been conditioned to believe is false. If the details of creation found in Scripture is not true, then the entire Bible falls apart on a faulty foundation of lies. And it's that simple. So, as believers, we know that Scripture does not lie. And you can't just dismiss the firmament or grossly mangle the text into silly notions of it allegedly just being an expanse of air or gas or the vacuum of space. The words used in Hebrew, Greek, Latin, and English, and frankly every other language, absolutely do not support such a definition. To suggest otherwise is to willfully dismiss the scriptural facts. Words mean things, and nothing about the rakia, stereoma, firmamentum, or firmament conveys any other meaning but that of a firm, solid structure that separates the waters above from the waters below, and upon which the throne of God sits. So you're literally forced to either accept or reject the foundation of God's throne. And guys, that is a big deal. Okay, so there is a little about the firmament. We looked at several scriptures that support the existence of the structure. We've broken down what the structure means with its definitions. And that's basically a summary of chapter 2 from my book, Constellations, Biblical Cosmology, and Why It Matters.